Welcome back to Animated Animators. We have a special kind of episode today. We're doing another animation demo reel review. So this one is from Shawn Irons, who reached out via Twitter. So I'm going to play the reel in a second. But Shawn, first of all, well done. And thank you for sending this in. We really love, both Nick and I love getting in the weeds talking about animation. And that's absolutely what we did here. Thank you for trusting us with your reel, and I promise that while our notes might seem like a lot, or it's going over a lot of your shots, they're really only given in order to take your stuff to the next level. So that said, just stay right here to see Shawn's reel, and then hear what we have to say afterwards.
All right, so we are going to be recording our thoughts individually. It's a little bit easier to do drawovers and go a little bit more in depth this way. I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on the in-game stuff from your reel. So to start, I want to say I think you have some really strong pieces in here. I think it's fantastic to have in-engine stuff in your reel, especially if you're a junior or you're just trying to get like an entry-level job, to show that you know what comes after, working in Maya, and also being able to implement it yourself to whatever degree you can, I think is really, really important. That said, I think that there's a lot of spots in the reel where it looks like we sort of held back or stopped before finishing or going into the polish stage of the animation. So I'm going to try to get through as many of those spots as I can and show you where we could keep pushing this a little bit further without getting too lost in the weeds on it. I want to keep it big picture as well. Secondly, as far as like the reel as a whole goes, I think that there needs to be some edits and some cuts overall. Generally, I mean, your reel is 1 minute long, and generally I think that's a good goal for how long an animation reel should be. But there's a few spots where you could tighten it up a little bit, or make some choices about what needs to stay in and what needs to go. And also focusing on your strongest pieces first. I think sometimes it can feel confusing to animators that they feel like they should end with their strongest piece in a reel, because that's the last thing that people are going to see, and it really, really should be the first thing that's in the reel. The strongest piece should be right at the beginning, because otherwise they're not, recruiters or people looking at your reel are not going to be as interested in it as it goes on. So why don't we tackle that one first, because I think that's a little bit of a more generalized note, a little bit easier to get a beat on. So going over your reel, there is 2 shots with this particular character. And one of them is this Locomotion state machine and a save location animation where we walk up, we do the kneel, we stand back up, we go into some locomotion, and we do a somersault. And there's also an animation at the very end, so you kind of bookended the reel with these 2 things, that is a hit combo. So you have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, and then there's a little bit of locomotion at the end, and it goes to credits. So what I would say is you have 2 with this character, but one of them is much, much stronger than the other one, and that's your hit combo. The hit combo is, in my opinion, the strongest piece in your reel. So I think that needs to be first. It's not that it doesn't have stuff that needs to be fixed up, which I'll go over later, but it's, I think, much stronger than the first one. So if you were going to weigh the 2, I would have that one and not the second one. That said, all of these go with the caveat, like, you can go back in and edit your work, and you can make changes to it and plus it up. So if you choose to go that route, I mean, keep both in, but I would still make that hit combo one go first. Secondly, in terms of just like, let's trim stuff up, this hit combo is really, really, really cool. Then we go into a little bit of locomotion and nothing happens at the end, so we get like 6 or 7 seconds of just relatively not interesting compared to like what the awesomeness that we just saw. So why don't we just end it after the hit combo? Like, that's the coolest move to end on. You're kind of taking the wind out of your own sails by having this little portion here at the end. I want to, let's go right into the animation notes, and I know it feels like I'm bouncing back and forth between these, but again, I'm trying to get through this a little more quickly so you don't have to sit here and listen to me talk for forever on this stuff. So going back to the first one, the save point, the locomotion file, I would say big picture, your note is that we need to take all these animations to the next level. It needs to be pushed. I think poses need to be pushed. I think body mechanics need to be worked on a little bit in terms of fleshing out the character a little bit more. If I was going to take one note away from this particular character in both animations, both, you know, the first one and the last one, the hair needs to be animated. So the hair is just this massive piece of, it's a massive part of this character. It is the length of their body longer. It's clearly a part of the character design, clearly a part of the model. You know, I don't know if this is actually from something or not, but if it was, I would imagine that the hair is almost an extra limb or something like that. Even if it doesn't get treated that way, it still has a lot of movement to it, and we don't have it. It doesn't really move it at all. Like, it's very in the face of whoever's, you know, using the controller. And aside from one little, there's a little bit of something in here, there's no movement at all. And the movement in here isn't really connected to anything happening in the head. We have a little bit of a S and C curve shape change, but it doesn't really feel connected to anything. So we have to avoid this, I think, at all costs. I know that comes with its difficulties. You know, it's got ground interaction, and you know, looping it outside of an idle is going to be interesting, but it sticks out for sure. As far as animation specific, like on the body, I think that the biggest spot to work on in this is the kneel down. It just feels like we have a couple of poses. We have the standing pose, and we have the kneeling pose, and then we go back to the standing pose. I think we just need to work on separating out the body movements a little bit more so that all three limbs don't move at once, and getting some interaction with that arm planting on the ground and catching the weight, pushing off. And right now, the left arm and the left knee come off the ground at the same time. I'm not saying that that's physically impossible. I'm just saying that this can be more interesting. This hand can stay on the ground and push up, and that means that the hips rise. And that knee comes off the ground, and I've created the worst draw over of all time. So ignore the way that looked as a draw over, but the point stands. If you're able to also, I know that you had this in the Raphael animation, which we'll go over at the end of this, but let's see if we can get look additive animations, or possibly use a blend space for the locomotion so that you have like leans left and right, or however you want to do this. It just felt like everything is on a train track as we walk, as we move through this spot, and we go through the locomotion. It just feels very straightforward. As far as the locomotion itself goes, I would say let's definitely try to open up the torso. Let's get some twist in the torso, some twist in the limbs. Everything feels like it's going very much down one axis. If you take a look at that right arm, you're going to notice that it doesn't really look like it's moving at all. Like, there's shoulder movement, but it doesn't feel connected to the body. We're not getting like this, twist, or, running out with there's just not a lot of visual interest. So see what you can do to sort of push that further. Again, most of your reel is not like, oh, this needs to be reworked or this needs to be gutted. It's just that it just needs to go to the next step. It just needs to be polished a little bit, but it's a fantastic start. I know that you know how to do the look and lean stuff, well, at least the look stuff, because you do have that awesome thing in your Raphael animation where it does the 180 from here to positive 180 here, and I think that's a great thing to have in your reel. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, yeah, last thing for this, there's just this weird kind of blend in your states between the save location and your locomotion. I'm not sure what amount of, if you still have this file, you have access to this. I don't know if this is from a class or whatever. But I want to investigate that. If we're showing off the gameplay animation, having transitions where it just kind of slides forward to the next point is a little bit, it could be cleaned up a little bit. It could be investigated a little bit. And if it can't be investigated, if it can't be cleaned up, then I would revert back to the original thought I had, which was let's use the one that looks great, which is that hit combo, and maybe not use this one. But if you can fix it, then fix it. So let's jump then to the hit combo. Let me find it here. And again, I think this is awesome. I think this is the strongest piece in your reel. I think it should be at the very beginning. As far as animation goes, I think that the general note I would have is that you need to continue focus on separating some of these limbs apart from each other, to generate more force and a little bit more visual interest, and really focus on getting more shape change. If you look at this just from the side, there's just a lot of very up and down, or not up and down, very, very straight torso. It's not to say that there aren't moments where we get bent over, but even this is still pretty much, we get straight lines from here to here. I think that there's a couple of we get low in one of these, and I think it happens somewhere else. But even this is still a pretty straight line. But I think if I could point to one, it would be this last one. And it's just, we have the opportunity here to, so this is the fourth combo. In the anticipation, we don't go down at all. We don't get low. And that means that we're still in the same basic body shape at the bottom that we are at the top, that we are at the bottom again. Pretty much just this. So get low, really extend upwards, just a terrible line. And then you can get compact again at the top. You get this foot, bent here and this one here. And that way you get that really cool, stretch and then squash here at the end. This also brings me to another point with almost all these hits, which is I think that say you have like a designated frame that needs to be the point of contact. I'm not suggesting that you change. The weapon needs to make contact with the enemy on this particular frame. So you don't need to change that. What I would suggest is look at the frame before and the frames leading up to that point of contact, because I think that you could separate out these motions quite a bit more. For example, the frame before contact is this on the first hit, and then this on the second hit. So if I just go back and forth between those, it could be a lot more interesting. We could still be doing something way back here like this. The weapon could be up, and then we come back down. The spacing between that frame before impact should be pretty big. The second hit, I think there was one more animation note that I had for this one specifically that didn't have to do with that shape change kind of thing, or the delaying the body parts thing, and that would be from a body mechanics perspective. This left foot here leaves the ground. Let's call it, this frame. Oh, I have it on time code, not frame numbers. Here we go. But that doesn't help because it's not, well, you know what it is. It's clipped to this specific one. But the left foot leaves the ground, and our body weight is over here, and this foot's planted over here. So right now, we haven't pushed off or anything. We're not headed to the right or headed forward, I guess. So the character's going to, this is telling me it's going to fall this way. But what happens is we just keep moving forward. In fact, we have really big spacing here, but I don't understand how we're pushing in this direction. When we're over this foot, we haven't generated that. So I'm not suggesting that now this foot has to stay on the ground and the other one has to stay forward. I think that you can have this one leave the ground, but we still need to get a push off here. So we get, push, just an all-timer for terrible drawings. Pushing off the ground, you can still get into this pose, but at this point, you can be, more hips over here. We've already pushed in this direction. And that goes right into the shape change thing. We can get this really appealing shape before we get into the, contact, pose where we get, low and we've swept through with the weapon, which looks awesome. So it's just a body mechanics thing. I think there's one more thing at the end here. If we're going to show this return to idle, and I think this is in the Raphael animation as well, let's really focus on the left and right when we take steps. So even though this is just a return to idle, and you may not think it's particularly important, what I'm noticing is that, we're on, this left foot is in the air, and our body weight is, and it's emphasized by that hair. I can really see it. Body weight is right over the middle, and leg is here. This character is falling over to the left. So we want to make sure that we get, body weight over the leg. I mean, that's a little bit extreme, but you understand what I'm saying, before we take steps back in. So those are the things that I would tackle for this if you can. Otherwise, if you don't have access to this anymore, I would just clip this one basically here, and ignore the drawovers for this, but I would just have it do this. Oh, that reminds me. Let's go back to the save one really quick. If you're going to have this one in there, I think that you can have this, you can have the save thing, and then you can have the run forward, and you can have the somersault. But if you have access to this full clip, let's not end it here. This is the last frame in your demo reel of the somersault. So you have this cool animation that I can go over the notes for this. I think it's cool to include it, but we don't finish it, and I'm not entirely sure why we're not. If we're going to show off all the stuff with this character, why we're not showing that off. I think you'd be better served by fleshing both of these out more, and honestly getting rid of I think it's the spaceman one, climbing and stuff like that. I think that they just serve your purposes better. So let's hop to the Raphael one. First of all, you know the way to my heart, Shawn. This is, I personally use this rig when I'm messing around in Unreal and I want to try out a goofy idea. I have a little blueprint that I go in and mess with, and this is the character that I've chosen. So I appreciate you doing that. Let's see. Let me go back through my notes here. So I just want to say, again, I think it's awesome that you are showing that you're working off your own stuff in Unreal. I think in the actual demo reel, which I don't need to go back to, you show that, it's running through the state machine. It's a great way to showcase that you understand how the state machine works. For the specifics of this, I would say, the specific notes on this, I would say that our walk or run start animation it just needs to be quicker. And I don't mean quicker like just jack up the speed by 50%. I mean, we need to have more like direct intent into stepping forward. What we do is we take a step almost backwards. I know that it's a step in, but it's effectively a step backwards, and our right foot is sliding on the ground. So why don't we just go right into the left foot forward for the contact of the run? And there might be an element of actually speeding up the animation as well. Again, it's more about how it feels, less. The animation is important, but it is more important, bottom line, how it feels when you push the thumbstick forward. And when I push the thumbstick forward, even though I'm just watching it and I'm not actually playing it, it just feels mushy. I don't feel immediate responsiveness of running, especially for running, because we're not just like slowly going forward to walk. As far as the run itself goes, I think that the biggest note I could give for this off just a generalized note is that here's your run and here's your walk. The walk looks cooler than the run. I'm not saying that it's always the case that the run looks cooler than the walk or vice versa, but the run doesn't have any of the attitude I think that the walk does. The walk feels heavier, the walk feels more badass, it's got a little bit more intent in there, and the run just feels a little bit vanilla and it's not as expressive. Raphael's shell is massive. I know this from experience working with this particular rig in Engine. If you're not going like top down, the shell takes up like everything. You're just seeing like the limbs in the shell. So I think that you need to explore again more twist and I'm guessing it's a Y rotation and have more like swing in the arms and show a little bit more intensity in those, because it just feels a little bit vanilla right now. And also it needs to feel a little bit weightier. I understand that it's running, so it's not going to be as like down up, but I need to feel something in those. I think you could also, generalized note, just push your left and right a little bit more, especially similar to the last one in this return to idle. This isn't so bad, but like again, this foot is off the ground, and we are just, you know what? I'm just going to use an arrow because that's easier. We are 1 foot off the ground, and this is where our center of weight is, and so this character's falling here. And then I think the more egregious one is this, where this foot is off the ground. This is where the center of our weight is. This character is falling over here. Well, maybe falling over here, but they're falling. So again, and I know this character, very stubby legs. It can be a little bit of a pain to avoid like lockout in those limbs, but I'd rather have difficulties dealing with that than to avoid, or than to not have the proper weight shifts as I step over with one leg and step back with the other. So last, I think one of the last things I have for this is that there just still appears to be a lot of sliding in this. I would say same note as for the run start or the walk start, whatever that was. It just feels a little bit slow. Maybe we can get into this a little bit more abruptly. I think I found with this character, sometimes you can get away with just like jumping into a pose a little bit more. It's an action-oriented character. I think it's going to feel a little bit better to get right into it. I love the walks. I think that this shows a lot more intensity, a lot more personality than the run does. The slide, this return to isle, we got to investigate this. Off the top of my head, hard to say what exactly is happening, but we, our walk ends here, and then we're shifting the route almost to the right, and then to the left. Like we slide, the whole thing slides to the right, and then we take a step left. So we just need to figure out maybe what's going on with the transition there, possibly the speed, the pose that you're basing this off of. Maybe, I don't know. There's a million things that could be going on, so you got to do a little bit of digging around. But overall, again, I think that this is really, really impressive to have in your reel as a junior. You're looking for entry level stuff, is to have in-engine stuff showing that, like, hey, I know the world doesn't begin and end in Maya or Blender or whatever. That it needs to be implemented. So I would, just to recap the entire thing, I think I would make some edits. I think that this is your strongest one. I think that this one probably doesn't need to be, it either needs to be fixed up a little bit, or it needs to, you can axe it. As far as some of the other animations, I'll go real quick through these because I know Nick is probably going to go through some of the more specific granular animation notes on these. The climbs, both of them, they're close to the beginning of your reel, and I think they need significant body mechanic work. I'm not going to go super in depth on it because I do think that, I'm guessing Nick will go over it. If he doesn't, and we end up, I'll edit this later, and you can reach out to me and we can go over some of that stuff. Because again, it's featured at the beginning of your reel, and there's some stuff in there that I think definitely it just needs to be fixed up. I don't think it's something like it needs to be scrapped, but it needs to be fixed. But I do want to say that these two also at the end, so the samurai sitting down, again, not perfect, needs some work, but I think that this is stronger than your climbing pieces, and I think that this one with the knight is stronger than the climbing pieces as well. If I had to give you a 30-second version of a note for your demo reel, it would be get rid of both of the climbing ones, get rid of the first one, put the hit combo at the beginning, put the knight hit combo at the beginning, put the samurai sitting down. Those would be my sort of generalized notes, but I would go back in there to the ones that need pushing and need fixing up, and I would really try to push those poses, squash and stretch, break up some of the body parts and the motions so that they hit a little bit harder.
So let me just go ahead and start kind of breaking things down. I'll point it out in a couple of the shots that I'm seeing that you have that are... before I forget, I noticed on one of the shots in your reel, there's... Yeah, so like if you look in the corner, you can see your frame rate, and like your camera name is here, and you've got your... Shoot, I don't remember what it's called, but the axis viewer, essentially. Something, when you're showcasing all of your work, if it's not rendered, I would say get rid of all of the display noise. For showcasing your work, you don't want to have any of these artifacts on screen. It's just a little cleaner and nicer when they're not there. That's not an animation note, that's just a real note, I guess. So something that I noticed in this shot, and the big guy, one of the things that stands out to me a lot is that you are animating to your constraint poses, and you're not animating in and out of them. What I mean by that is, let's take a look at this guy's hand as he's putting it onto the tower here, the battlement. So as he lifts it up and he slams it down, you pull it back a little bit, and then that hand like barely moves for almost the rest of the shot. This one, once you put it in place, it kind of just stops moving. It feels very IK, very constraint based. Because none of that stuff is moving like it actually would, you're shooting yourself in the foot with the realistic feel that you're going for. Nothing ever really stops moving. Even when you're standing still, you don't stop moving. You're breathing, you're shifting your weight, you're fidgeting with your hands, you're looking around, with your head. All of those little things are acting and animating within a pose. And what catches my eye in these shots that I was pointing out is that you are animating to your constraint, and then you're not doing anything with those appendages once you hit that constraint pose. So like with the feet on the ladder or climbing on the wall, they're hitting and sticking every time they get somewhere. So again, like when we're like if you look at how your hands are coming up, another thing too is you're rotating your hand to catch the battlement. It's something that we might call animating too perfectly. You're animating in a way where he's perfectly grabbing the top of the battlement. That typically wouldn't happen. Perfection very rarely happens in real life, right? We always mess up a little bit or flub, or you never immediately grab everything that you want on the first try correctly, like purposefully, perfectly. And when you animate to a constraint like this, without kind of doing anything with weight shifts in that constraint, you just feel like you're animating something that's a little bit unnatural because it's too perfect in a way. And I get that a lot with this, like these hands just kind of thunk and sticking, but also this is a big creature, so you're probably like, he would probably hit with like his palm, and then the rest of his hand would collapse around it, and then he would grab it, and you would feel like that gripping sensation, and his hand would move a little bit. So those kind of things are what you want to make sure that you get into your work to make it feel more physical and real. It's not just click, click. When you do something like that, you're losing a lot of the weight that you're going for, especially with a creature this big. On that note, another thing is, obviously this is clearly a very big creature, but when I'm watching the shot, the way that you're trying to portray the weight is with camera shakes and with slow movement of the creature. But the things that are fighting against you and making this actually feel weighty are the slow timing that you have isn't being offset by the increase in spacing or overlap on any of the body parts, right? So with something that's bigger and heavier, you're going to get a lot more residual motion in things. Take the kick that he does, for example, right? This kick, is this creature really able to, if this thing really kicks this door in, is he really able to stop his momentum forward like he kind of does, and then just kind of, gently is the wrong word, but just put his foot down where he wants to? Or would that kick keep carrying his foot forward and he just kind of has to catch himself on the battlements kind of thing? Again, because he's so weighty. Another thing too is when he slams on the battlements. Again, you want to make sure that you're generating that motion from the chest and the clav down to the arm. You want to, and then there's going to be some residual motion in the chest and potentially the head and neck. Not as much in the head, because you want him to be focused on what he's looking at, but you're going to feel the body moving, the overlapping action, the follow through after each motion with a giant creature like this. So it's those couple things that are kind of hurting you trying to fight, showing that he's a big weighty creature, by just increasing the timing. So I think that covers it for this one. Let me go back to, excuse me. So for this one, I should probably play it while I'm talking over at the first point. For this one, another thing that really stands out to me is the feeling, and this one too a little bit, is the feeling of animating pose to pose. Like you have your key poses and you are animating strictly to them. And what I mean by that, if we start breaking this down a little bit more, is on your first step here, right here, you actually have a breakup of the timing of when the foot, the hand, and the hand grab the ladder. You have that breakup in this first step, right? Kind of scrub through, boom, hand. Hand and foot are actually kind of going at the same time, but that same timing, after this first step here, you will see it on every consecutive step. So you see how these two latch onto the ladder at the same time. Keep scrolling. These two hit their poses at the same time. And it just feels like this. It just feels like you're kind of going back and forth between two poses. And there's nothing happening between them. It just feels like you have your key poses and the software is doing all the rest of the in-betweens. So definitely getting a breakup of how the body is working, like what is leading what. You're missing whatever is leading the next thing. Kind of like I was alluding to before. For the arms reaching. The arm reaches from the chest first, and you kind of... I don't know if it's coming through properly, but chest, clavicle, boom. Chest, clavicle, boom. That kind of thing. And we're missing that both in the reaching and in the steps. And again, if you look at the feet here, the feet and the hands, you can see as soon as you hit that constraint, you can tell which frame it's happening on because the foot sticks and it just stays in that shape. You can see that the ankle is moving around it, and the knee and everything moving is what's changing the shape of the leg, but the foot's not moving. And whenever you climb a ladder or do something like this, you are gonna on the rung because you have to then push off of it to get up to the next one. So because you're just kind of hitting and sticking, you're fighting, you're not giving yourself that that energy to go up to the next rung that you need for climbing like this. Another thing too is if I look at it from this side here, let me just play it, let me go back. I don't feel any like C shape changing in this from this side until you get to the very top here. See how he crouches down? That is the only time I see any kind of C shape from the side angle. But if we look at it from the back here, we're kind of like overdoing it. Now that's not to say you can't hit a super pushed like stylized pose, because obviously you can do things like that, right? But again, because everything is hitting and sticking on the same frames and the timing is the same everywhere in the body, it's over accentuating that shape in a way that's hurting the shot. Because you're constantly going only from one extreme to the other with no in-betweens, and no feet and hips leading the push-off to then the arms reaching and grabbing to the next foot pushing and then the arm grabbing, that kind of lead and follow. Because you're missing it, that currently, you're just getting kind of a weird, like, almost like lizard spider climb. And it's just feeling a bit off for what you're going for with a shot like this. When he's, when I'm going to call it a dismount, but when he's getting off the ladder here, you can see a nice jump. Your cog kind of hits a wall in TY on the jump up. So like, right, you got this. Come up. Okay, see how we're pushing? We're pushing. On this push, you've hit your max height in TY before you've actually started pushing forward. So you're getting this straight up leap pose, and it looks like it wants to jump higher, but you're not actually lifting the cog to match it vertically. So he just kind of hits this leap pose, and then just moves forward and down. So your pose for the push-off is indicating a bigger movement than what he is doing. And then through these few frames here, you can see your cog isn't actually changing in TY at all. It's just moving horizontally in space perfectly. And then you can feel, again, I don't have frame numbers or anything, but like right here, this kind of diagonal movement is sharper than it should feel because it was only moving horizontally, and then all of a sudden it shoots down. And again, this, not a bad pose per se, but the reach that it's doing is bigger than the jump that he was actually doing, just because of how the cog is currently animated. So it's really making sure that in this instance, the poses are bigger than what the action is doing because of the spacing and the arc of what you actually have the cog, the path that it's going on. Back to kind of like the spider shape that you're doing here. It feels like you're overcompensating in the chest and potentially the upper, like the secondary spine control. And I'm not feeling any movement in the clavicles on the climb. And again, that's hurting your breakup of what leads what in all of these actions. So it's just the way that it's animated. Like here, does he need to stay in this shape for so long? Or as he's kind of holding himself up, is he going to kind of shift into a more comfortable position? I think that's what it feels like, and I'm fully realizing it here. He feels uncomfortable because of how he's always in an extreme pose. Again, there's no breakup in the middle, so he's always in an extreme C shape to C shape to C shape. And if he's always in this overcompensated extreme state, you're missing the breakup and the mechanics that you are aiming to have in a shot like this. Again, the idea is there. And again, you can use these poses, this extreme, like kind of lizard climb. It's doable. It's just how you get in and out of these poses that will allow you to use the more extreme keys that you have. And I think that's just what it's missing right now. Or I think that's one of the big things it's missing. And again, because everything is happening on the same keys and the timing never changes, the shot is just feeling very even throughout. Again, all of the same kind of stuff can apply. Here, you look like you want to have a C shape because of the way that the hip is going, but then the spine is going the opposite way. So you're getting a kind of weird, like, it's more than a Z shape to the spine. And overall, I felt like in this one, the hips were kind of just doing their own thing. It doesn't fully feel like the hips are really attached to what the feet are doing. And again, we get that the directionality of this pose makes it look like he wants to jump higher than what he's doing, whereas his movement is actually more horizontal in this case. So it's really about making sure that your poses are leading into one another. Even though you're overshooting and catching yourself, this pose here, it makes the jump feel lighter because he looks like he's going to jump high, and then he just kind of shifts over a little bit. So it's really making sure, kind of like on the dismount, that you animate the intensity to match your poses that you're building. And again, this one I think is suffering a lot, one more time, from the hit and stick animating into a constraint pose. You see it on pretty much every single foot here. So as soon as it hits onto the wall, click, it literally just clicks into place. Again, this one, you kind of have an overlap there, but because everything still feels like it's shifting around at the same time, you're missing that lead and follow. And you can see that your arm is breaking a little bit here. because it doesn't feel like we're like the clav is collapsed right there, and it doesn't feel like we're really using the clavicle, because the spine doesn't really feel like it's shifted to match what needs to happen to get this catch to work. So whereas the climbing up the ladder feels like it has too much C shape, this one feels like you're missing out where you could put the C shape in, to the spine, I should say. But yeah, I think I'm gonna leave my my segment there, because I don't want to feel like I'm reiterating the same things over and over again too much. But I did want to make sure that I showcased a couple of ways to look at the same kind of note that I am seeing across those 3 shots. Yeah, I want to say thank you. I can see that you have kept going since before, and I think that's awesome. And I think that in terms of the game engine stuff, you could do more than I can. But it's just getting that bit of polish across the board into your reel, to help showcase what you actually can do, instead of just getting things to a place where they're usable and then going on to the next thing to have more and more. Make sure that more that you have is not just okay. It is as good as you can get it.